Hey everybody, welcome in Cosmic Soul Boogie Show, where we talk about all things UAP. And as of recent, we've been kind of trying to get on this, what we see as a new interest in disclosure. In early May, my friend Gerard DeVries called me and said, "Hey, John, the government's about to drop some new disclosure UAP information." And they did. And several weeks after that, there was another drop. But none of it really jaw dropping. So what we wanted to talk about today is what we see as a possible new excitement over disclosure. And we could just start with, is it not true that as we speak, there is a bill in the Senate? We're going to try to have a second go at the UAP Disclosure Act. Tell me about what that is. And did it not fail in 2023? And I'm curious.
It did. I might be wrong about this, but I think it's the third try.
The third try.
Yeah. The first one was in 2023. And again, bipartisan. I can't stress that enough.
We need it.
It was Schumer, basically, and Senator Rounds, Schumer being a Democrat and Rounds the Republican, who got together and put together this UAPDA, the UAP Disclosure Act. The original one, and we've talked about this before, mentioned non-human intelligence about over 20 times, I believe it was. Basically trying to go after private companies with things like eminent domain, like if you have this technology, give it to us for this UAP technology crash retrieval program and on and on. Let's back up a little bit, because again, my job is to make the case that this stuff is probably true. Harry Reid, also Senate Majority Leader for a while.
Nevada.
Right? He's the one who started and gave money for to start ATIP, which is where Lou
Right.
Elizondo was involved. So we have Harry Reid, we had Schumer, we've got Rounds, other senators like Democrat Senator Gillibrand are all behind this UAP-DA Act. And again, I have to ask people, why would these senators, these politicians, back up this type of topic, which normally is,
They run from.
Right, they would absolutely run from it. How come they are backing all this up? How come they're writing all this legislation and trying to get it passed? So they tried to do it in 2023, didn't work, mainly because of, I believe it was Congressman Mike Turner for sure.
One was from Ohio, one from Alabama.
Right.
They're in the House.
Yeah.
And it's found out that they want to kill the bill, and they did. And because a lot of their donor base are these private corporations.
Not just a lot. Their top 5 donors were all aerospace companies. And we've mentioned this again. I know we've mentioned this on the show before. Mike Turner, his district had Wright-Patterson Air Force Base,
right,
which is allegedly where many of these crash retrievals are brought to, and the technology is researched. So that was 2023. It gets killed. I believe they tried it again in 2024. I believe it got killed again. But they're trying now, presently, Rounds again, and Schumer are putting it forward. It is also getting another version of it or something is getting put forward in Congress as well. And, Senator Rounds actually was heard in the Capitol halls saying, yeah, we're going to put this out again, and let's see who opposes it. In other words, let's smoke them out. Why would you oppose this if there's nothing to it? So let's smoke out the people who are trying to hold this back.
I still haven't been able to find who the voice of opposition is. Did you all?
But this is one way to find out, is just to offer it again and then find out who would object to it. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not the House has any provisions along the same line as our proposal.
Yeah.
And if there is, then we have a stronger case for putting it in the final version.
And again, why would Senator Rounds go through all this if he did not know that this was a real issue, that there really are crash retrieval programs, and we have to find them? And the biggest part, by the way, about this bill this time is the amnesty that we've talked about before.
You got to give these people immunity.
You gotta.
I mean, no one's going to talk. There's a twofold interest here. I sense from being with you that there is a little renewed hope and excitement that this bill will pass. And you were just bringing up, well, why? So we've talked about culturally that the tinfoil hat stigma is slowly diluting, and you're not judged a nutcase if you say you believe anymore. And certainly, this
No.
would pertain to people or elected officials. They feel that cultural shift as well. But the other thing you just alluded to is it not as someone's willingness now, Congress senators' willingness now to pass this bill? You almost could deduce that they know something we still don't, but it's big. And if they don't pass this bill, boy, will they look ridiculous by being like that last
Right.
flank of an army that's trying to hold it down,
Yeah.
So there is renewed excitement. Am
I mean,
right?
they're part of the Gang of Eight, some of them.
Right.
Right? They hear the most highly classified information of the United States government. If those people are pushing the fact that the crash retrievals are real and we have these programs and the private industry has them, and we have to basically wrangle it back from them because the Pentagon apparently, gave them a lot of the stuff.
Hey, just for the audience, because you've taught me this a bit ago, but some of our viewers might be wondering, well, we always hear of the U.S. government coming and taking everything away and keeping it a secret. But tell the audience just briefly. So you're saying that some crashed craft, some biologics. Why do they get into the hands of private industry? You had a good answer when I asked you that.
Well, one of the reasons is secrecy.
Right.
It's another level of secrecy. You cannot FOIA
right.
a private company, right?
Okay, that's what I'm
If
getting
it's a
at.
government agency like the Pentagon, you can say, hey, I'm putting in this official request. I want to see these, these flight logs like we were talking about the last show with the Varginha and the flights.
Right.
And, they can still say no, but you can officially ask for those documents. You cannot do that in private industry. So what better way for another layer of secrecy to say, listen, guys, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Battelle, those companies like that, Boeing, we're going to give you this stuff, maybe we'll give you some goodies, like you get to keep some of the technology, do something with it, whatever. But keep it under wraps. That way it's not under our roof, it's under yours, and nobody can FOIA it.
It's another level of the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Absolutely.
And that is, a lot of people might not know that, just the extent to which private, and of course, these private industries you mentioned, they're in the arms industry, the space industry. So, if the goal was to do some reverse engineering, what a better I mean, you're not going to go hide it at a Toys R Us warehouse. You're going to get it around scientific people who have the technology to reverse engineer.
Right. And by the way, again, that's why Schumer and Rounds and other senators had that eminent domain in there.
Right.
It was to say, listen, guys, private industry guys, you do not have the right to this technology that belongs to the U.S. government, because they basically the story is they kind of lost control of it, right? These private industries just kind of grab control.
Right. And we're talking many decades. And
Yes.
Just like we change our leaders every so often, so too does private industry. Not only change leaders, but have different goals for their profit projections. Somehow the UAP stuff could be not as important for a decade. And then all of a sudden it comes to the surface. So,
Right.
so getting what we know from private industry first to Congress, then to the public is a big step. And I sense you're somewhat hopeful about that.
When I hear things about amnesty that's being seriously talked about, to giving people in the window, right now they're talking about bringing credible witnesses to the executive branch and giving them amnesty on a, one-by-one basis. But even they were also, a couple of weeks ago talking about giving like a 60-day window,
Right.
where you can come in and, give you amnesty, tell us everything. But again, that only protects you from the law. It doesn't protect you from these private industries who might, have a man in black sitting behind your bed, under your bed,
Right.
and put a bullet in your head.
Talking about disclosure, potentially a UAP Disclosure Act, hopefully it gets passed this time. When we talk about disclosure, a person that's got me very interested in this topic was our boy Lou. And I'm just curious, what's going on with Big Lou? You had some insight.
There is some news on Lou.
Tell me.
It kind of hit UFO world a little bit like a nuke. You're familiar with Ross Coulthart.
I am.
Award-winning journalist. He's the real deal. And he got interested in UFOs a few years ago. Well, now many years ago, probably I think like a decade ago, to originally kind of debunk the whole thing and found out that there's actually something there, followed it. Now he works for News Nation and does these great interviews. In fact, he was the first one who interviewed Grush before his testimony in Congress, first one to interview Elizondo before, I believe, his testimony in Congress. So there is some type of position that was up for grabs that they were talking about, like a UAP czar or something like that. And the word was they were thinking about Lou. And apparently, according to Ross Coulthart, the people in the legacy program, his sources, were not happy about that.
It's pretty obvious, I'm not going to lie to you, that the gentleman that I've been talking about, whom I suspect might be up for a big position, is Lou Elizondo. And as you may have noticed in recent weeks, I have been quite delicately outspoken in my belief on previous Q&As that I think Lou needs to be more forthcoming about his past roles. And I like and respect Lou a lot. And I think he's in a difficult position because he's bound by his security oath about what he can reveal about his past roles. But there are people who bitterly resent and don't think it's a good idea that Lou be appointed to a position of power in UAP transparency because they think that he was part of a previous agenda that was essentially to try to control the narrative. And I think a lot of this was an intention by James Clapper, General James Clapper, to try and impose a narrative on the public domain using Lou as a frontman, a highly urbane, articulate and likable frontman, to try to restrict what the public was told about crash retrievals. That all of a sudden, David comes out and says, hang on a moment, we're not just arguing here about whether there are aliens or not. What we're talking about here is a crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, and I'm saying it's real, he says. And I think that did wrong foot that national security state attempt to try and provide a controlled disclosure. They're patriots. They love their country. And I've spoken to people in the legacy program who knew Lou. Lou, I know a lot of people, and they know you, and I know you can't speak about the role that you've held within the legacy program, but you did.
So you're talking about something we could actually term controlled disclosure.
Absolutely. Controlled disclosure. That's what it seems like they wanted.
Because I remember when you were generating my interest in this topic, I saw early documentaries with Lou Elizondo, and he you just put a lot of faith into him because you could tell he was believable. You could tell he was for real. And you just got the impression that he was going to fight as hard as he can to bring this disclosure.
And I think that's true.
I do too.
You know, I think, and Ross even, did say that. He goes, I love Lou. I think he's a great patriot and a great guy and everything. It's just, tell us everything kind of thing. And if you do look at if you do go back in time, at first Lou was always like, and I always found that interesting at first. When he first came out, he was saying, because the Pentagon had just admitted that there were things flying around that we did not understand. They officially admitted that. Okay. So then Lou comes out, and he's kind of saying, well, could be, of course, Russian, could be Chinese, but it could be something else. And then as time goes on, that whole concept goes out the window. Now it's definitely something ET.
Right.
And then it turns into, it's not just ET, it could be multidimensional. Then the conversation switches to not just multidimensional, but has to do with consciousness. So if you look at it from I don't want to say misinformation, or PSYOP, but as a controlled disclosure plan to slowly get people used to it. Yeah, you start out with, it could be Chinese, but you know what? It could be something else. And then move on and on. And slowly people get accustomed to what the reality is.
Right. And that goes to a point that we often make, is the general public ready for full in-your-face disclosure? Or, for the sake of an orderly society, is a controlled disclosure in our best interest? But there we go again, right? With other people deciding what's in our best interest.
Right. Telling us what the nature of our reality is.
And I go back to what was that, June 12th, that great meeting of ufologists on the steps of Congress with Burleson Burchett. And man, they were, to hear those guys talk, they weren't about controlled disclosure. They went now, and we're going to give everybody immunity.
Yeah.
So
they want to kick down the doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we are sitting again, weeks after that, not in the same spot. We are both, I think you could tell, hopeful that things are coming our way. But we also, particularly you, have learned enough not to get too excited yet.
No. And by the way, Lou did respond. He was on the Como show and responded to that whole Ross Coulthart thing. And he did say, look, I've been fighting for disclosure for the last 10 years. And he can't argue he's done more for disclosure than almost anybody
He and
else.
Grush are the big,
right? So, but when it got to the point of, what do you do if you sign an NDA? He's like, well, yeah, if I sign an NDA and you ask me, do I know about a program? Even if I don't know about that program, I'm going to say no comment.
It is true that I have a security
that's the
clearance
space.
still.
That's the space, Lou, right? Because up till that point, I think Ross would agree with everything you just said until right here. But you were in the legacy program. You've never really talked about it. Is that because you can't?
Yeah, well, first of all, I didn't say I was part of the legacy program. And let me make this clear too, Chris, and I'm sure you can appreciate this. When you work for the government and you have a security clearance, there's always these statements, we cannot confirm or deny. And people always take that as some sort of implicit yes. But the reality is that's not at all what that means. There are classified programs out there. And if someone were to ask me, Lou, were you part of, Project X with the M1 Abrams tank? Even if I wasn't, if it's a classified program, I would have to say I can't discuss that. In fact, I can't even acknowledge that.
But, again, you always hit that wall of the NDAs, which is, again, why we need the amnesty, which is one of the reasons why Congress is pushing for amnesty.
And, you just made me think it's a shame. For these witnesses and these whistleblowers that come forward, it's almost a shame because there's almost something sinister that happens to them. If you take Lou Elizondo and Grush, they come out of the gate wanting to disclose, and then so many people can try to read into what they're saying is, they're not being totally honest. They know more than, it almost puts them in such a, precarious position, which isn't fair, I think.
Yeah.
They're doing their best to work within where they are. I mean, when we saw Grush on the steps of Congress, I almost felt bad for him because you could tell he was about to say something that he's been trying to talk about for years, but he was almost hurried about it, but you could just tell he was almost at the end of his rope.
And he's stressed out, don't forget.
He looked stressed out.
Well, of course. I mean, if he says the wrong thing, right, he's only had certain things he can say cleared by Dopser.
Right.
To talk about. And in your head, here you're having a press conference and you have to remember all that. I can talk about this in my head, but I can't talk about that.
That's
and if I do talk about that, I might be charged with espionage. And again, why we need amnesty.
It's so true. It's almost like a Dr. Kevorkian thing where he's trying to help,
yeah,
but he's doing something that others don't really agree with. And hey, for a minute, back to Big Lou. Wasn't he one of the first to talk about lunar objects? Don't we have a situation there where there's some disclosure to be had there?
I'll make this quick. It is interesting. There's, of course, in the UFO lore, there's always been a lot of talk about possible structures on the moon, and they show the pictures and they're all grainy and it's hard to tell. Some of them do look interesting, some of them not so much. But it was interesting that a few weeks ago, Lou did drop a hint about the moon, about structures on the moon, and then he did it again.
There's also photographs that I don't believe have been made public yet that show on the lunar surface what appear to be large monolithic structures with right angle cuts that appear to be on the lunar surface. And I believe those photographs, if they have not been released yet, may be released soon. But they are certainly very intriguing looking at these objects from space.
So again, he always drops hints.
I'll tell you, everyone, it's a neat place to be because, as you could tell, we're hopeful, but we're always in that place, aren't we? Where, boy, this could happen and that could happen. If only this person would talk, or if only this picture could be revealed. That's kind of the fun of it. Stay tuned. Gerard DeVries, Honest John, Cosmic Soul Boogie, all things UAP. See you soon.